How can I be more inclusive, Jackie? Well, that's a question I get asked a lot. Now, maybe it's because of the work I do, helping organisations recruit and develop their staff, or maybe it's because I'm remembered as being a middle-aged female lesbian from Birmingham. I don't know. But, you know, diversity and inclusion is a hot topic right now, isn't it? And I understand that more than many. I'm 45, which means I grew up in the 70s and 80s, a time when, I guess, exclusion was really the only normal. Women heavily objectified, gays and lesbians unfairly stereotyped, black and ethnic minority groups ridiculed on our TV screens. And if you were suffering from a physical or mental illness back then, you were probably largely misunderstood. And yet, I believe that the key to the future lies in the past, because surely if we're going to work together towards a future where we learn to include, we must first unravel the way in which we learnt to exclude. Here's my thoughts. So think about how you learnt your first word. Looking around, it's probably a while ago for some of you, but think back. I would imagine you probably had a parent or a caregiver repeating words over and over like mama or dada over and over again, right? Until one day one of those people got lucky and you copied their name. Because that's how it works. That's how we learn language, from words that we hear every day. It's how we learn behaviours, from the actions and behaviours of others that we see every day. And I've often wondered, which parent or caregiver taught my 5-year-old playmates terms like bonkai and Bible basher? You ever use words like that growing up? Maybe you don't care to remember, but if you did, I'm sure you wouldn't remember who taught you or when it happened. But these were labels I was given. You see, at 5 years old, my left eye turned inwards, so I looked a little different to the other kids for a while. And at that same time in my life, it transpired that I was the only kid going off to the Catholic school just because my parents had different beliefs to their parents. So I was called these names down the street. Labels that thankfully didn't define me as a person, but they caused me to feel this real deep sense of isolation, exclusion, hurt. I wondered years later which parent or caregiver taught some of my now 15-year-old classmates terms like leather, dyke, jiff, lesbo. You ever use words like that growing up? But these were labels I was given, simply because I was different. You see, at 15, it turns out I wasn't like the other girls in my class, and I didn't like boys that way. And I bet if you did use those terms, you wouldn't remember who taught you or when it happened. And thankfully, these were labels that did not define me as a person, but they again caused me feeling this deep sense of isolation, exclusion, and hurt. And yet, I was one of the lucky ones. I made it through. Many back then and now don't. Did you know that if you identify in one or more minority group, you are twice as likely to self-harm than if you don't? Statistics tell us that 1 in 4 people identifying in one or more minority group have considered, or worse, attempted suicide. This can't go on, right? When we think back to the past, we have wonderful people like Abraham Maslow, who taught us that we all have an innate need to feel safe, to feel like we belong, and to feel like our contribution to the world matters. And maybe that's what was missing for me a little while back then. But I did make it through to this wonderful corporate world of diversity and inclusion. Yay! I see employers that have caveats on the bottom of their job adverts saying, "We welcome applications from XYZ minority group." Yes. Some of them even have within them dedicated LGBTQ community support groups, Black and ethnic minority mentor schemes, hell, even advancing women in leadership programs. And I say, fantastic. These are great steps in diversity. But do not confuse it with inclusion. Because I believe the saying goes something like, diversity is inviting different people to your party, and inclusion teaches those people to dance together. So when people ask me, how can I be more inclusive, Jackie? I say to them, promote a world free from isolation. Ask yourself, who am I inviting to my party? In my home and in my workplace? What steps do I take to help them dance together? If you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, you'll remember that Atticus Finch tells us, do not try to understand a man until you have truly gotten under his skin and walked around a bit. Did you ever really take the time to step into the shoes of somebody from a different social group to your own, even for a short while? And if you have not, then please don't try to think you can understand those people. Ask yourself always, what more can I do? When people ask me, how can I be more inclusive, Jackie? I say, promote a world free from hurt. Be mindful of the language that we use in our homes with the next generation and in our workplace with our current generation. Remember, we copy what we see every day. Now, I'm not proud to tell you this, but hey, I'm here now. But I had a situation when I was 16, and I hit a boy in school, square on the jaw. It was completely out of character, and nothing like that had happened before or since. But you know, that day, the jibes, the sneers, the mockery, it just got too much. And I flipped. Actually, I call it the day homophobia met PMT. I lost. But you know, jokes aside, that's a whole other TED Talk. But jokes aside, did you really ever take the time to notice if people in your networks, whether in your private lives or in your corporate worlds, are acting out of character? And if you did take the time to observe, which I guess is step one, did you ever reflect upon what language did I use or what behaviours did I exhibit that just might, in some small way, have contributed to how that person is also behaving or how they are feeling? What more can you do? And when people ask me, how can I be more inclusive, Jackie? I say, promote a world free from negative labels. Labels that just serve to highlight difference, segregate and divide us. My comedy hero, the late great Victoria Wood, she was discussing how she makes her life more interesting in one of her famous Dinner Lady sketches, and she says, I'll tell you what I do. I take the labels off my tins so I don't know what I'm having for my tea. Now, I can't begin to do her comedy or that accent justice, but isn't that a great metaphor for inclusion? What labels have you used today? When was the last time you heard somebody else use a label that was unkind and you failed to challenge that? What difference might it make to your world and your businesses if just for one day you could take the labels off your tins? What more can you do? You know, Abraham Maslow, he spoke some good sense. We want to feel safe, we want to belong, we want to feel like our contribution matters. And by the way, there's no exception if you're black or if you're gay, right? And you know, thinking about feeling safe, it's taken me a long time to share this story, quite so candidly. So I thank you in the room for allowing me to feel safe to do so. I look around this room and I see so many different, diverse faces and people and backgrounds, and I feel like, you know, I do belong. And I truly hope that my contribution here today matters to you. Because in business, we're so often taught, think outside of the box. You want an award-winning strategy, you want to smash your competition, think outside of the box. But I urge you, when it comes to inclusion, think inside the box, because it's within the small steps that we can all take responsibility for that can truly make a difference. And how will I know that we've really reached a society of inclusion? Well, when a woman like me is no longer remembered for being a middle-aged female lesbian from Birmingham, but is actually remembered for the one and only label that ever defined me, and that's my name. And as we all know, every journey begins with just one step. Will you come with me? Thank you. Thank you.